audition many girls for the part. When you see the girl that was shown to you earlier today, you will say, "This is the girl."
Every year, somewhere near 1 million new books are published in the United States. That's not even including self-help books, which would bring the total up to near 4 million. In this brutal attention economy, where reading is in decline, where book coverage is being slashed left and right, novels elbow for reviews from a dwindling number of legacy media outlets that still do book reviews. Most novelists are lucky to get a single write-up in a magazine or newspaper of record. Or are they? On January 13th, 2026, Madeline Cash's debut novel, Lost Lambs, was written up in New York Magazine, Lit Hub, The Atlantic, The New York Times. 3 days later, The Washington Post, which, sadly, in the time since, no longer has a book section because Bezos got rich off books but couldn't give a flying fuck about them. Also, Vogue. 5 days later, The frickin' New Yorker. Wow. Lucky Madeline, right? Or is something sinister going on? Author and critic Freddie DeBoer smelled something fishy. On January 16th, DeBoer published a Substack piece titled, "Perhaps People Are Cynical About Success in the Creative Arts for a Reason." It was clear to DeBoer that Madeline Cash was not just lucky or good. Her book benefited from what he called a coordinated media campaign that has been orchestrated from above. He admits that he does not know the exact mechanism, but notices that the verbiage used in a lot of this coverage seems implausibly similar. No, this is not a coincidence. My God. Are these elite outlets sharing notes, regurgitating phrases from a press release? This young writer, Madeline Cash, has been the beneficiary of some sort of higher power that shapes book coverage. But what? What is the higher power? Eventually, DeBoer names the forces: networking, patronage, nepotism, and plain old rank corruption. Plain old rank corruption? At the New York Times Book Review?
Who's next, Hank?
Madeline Cash.
Oh, baby, I saw every little star.
This is the girl.
I can see it now. The bartender's furtive nod toward the back room, the bloated envelope passed to an underling, the waitress teetering and licking her teeth. "You want another shrimp cocktail, Mr. Cruz?" Of course, if you can't buy coverage, there's another way. "Hey, Gilbert Cruz at the New York Times. Maybe you should have one of your boys review this book by the boss's niece. If you don't, you're gonna come with me on a trip to the lake. Yeah, you're gonna get to know the lake real well, especially the bottom part." Unfortunately, DeBoer provides no evidence of corruption, rank or otherwise. He doesn't name names for his accusation of nepotism. Madeline Cash does not appear to be
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
His granddaughter. On that list is also networking, which, networking does increase people's professional chance of success. Related to DeBoer's conspiratorial statement that somebody knows somebody, author Garth Greenwell writes, "What an odd thing to say. Of course somebody knows somebody. It would be strange if they didn't. It would be truer to note that nobody knows nobody. Obviously relationships matter in publishing, as they do everywhere else." DeBoer's best critique here is the term patronage, implying insiders helping insiders. This is hard to refute, but he also provides no evidence that it's actually at work here. Without specific accusations, without a smoking gun, we're left with that classic something smells fishy conspiracy. Becca Rothfeld, reviewer for Lit Hub, claims DeBoer's argument retreats to the same familiar the establishment is up to no good position that we can all predict with such ease. The anti-institutional consensus that is forming in certain quarters is boring, doctrinal, and prevents conversation from getting interesting or specific. I agree. It seems that what really bothers DeBoer is that the creative and artistic industries stubbornly portray themselves as meritocracies when they aren't. But do they? I think this is a straw man argument. The only publishing-adjacent person I could find saying anything about publishing being a meritocracy is this literary agent named Donald Moss, who sells craft books to authors and thereby financially benefits if authors believe that it's all a meritocracy. But that's one guy, and he's not a publisher. Certainly Hollywood never claims that it's a meritocracy. Everyone knows you can't just write a great script. You got to know somebody big who'll read it. So DeBoer has built this straw man and then attacks it with floppy weapons, because he provides no actual evidence of corruption. But what if the evidence is out there after all? See, the critic for the New York Times who reviewed Lost Lambs is John Marr, who, when not working, he can be found at one of New York City's many literary and publishing events. It also turns out Madeline Cash was a player in the Dime Square scene, founding Forever magazine, which threw a bunch of rowdy literary parties in that post-pandemic time when people were jumping out of their skin. Could Marr and Cash have rubbed elbows at one of these literary events? "I'll get you another Harvey Wallbanger if you review my book someday." Deal. And if you're wondering, yeah, Harvey Wallbanger is a real cocktail that I just learned about. I love that its name sounds like something from a Tim Robinson sketch. So after I recorded this video and made that Harvey Wallbanger joke, I learned that Madeline Cash really was working the parties, talking about how she got her book to FSG, the publishing house she was obsessed with. My agent helped me get the book to my editor, Jackson Howard, but I essentially stalked Jackson to a party in a warehouse in Chinatown. So yeah, while that's not corruption, she's definitely using her NYC access and charm to her advantage. She writes, "I don't think this is traditionally how people get published. It's probably how people get restraining orders."
You live in a bubble where people do what you want and tell you what you want to hear.
Oh, I don't think that's true.
One of the strange things about DeBoer pointing out that book publicity isn't meritocratic is like, how would that even work? In what ways could book reviewing be a meritocracy? The New York Times can't know the quality of the book until they've reviewed it. Are we expecting that they will review every single published novel? DeBoer notes that the deluge of Lost Lambs reviews was clearly not the product of a bunch of professional writers at big deal publications just happening to pull the same debut novel off the pile and saying, "Well, golly, by coincidence I'll write about this today." But is that the system he'd like? There's just a pile of books and the reviewers randomly pick out one to write about? I agree that there is a higher power at work here. That higher power is clicks, eyeballs, dollars. Publications pick books to review based on early trade reviews, blurbs, the author profile, what the book is about, and buzz. Can people with more money and connections generate more buzz? Absolutely. And buzz is good for book reviews because if people have heard about the book or author, they're more likely to click the book review and read it. And then they're more likely to go and talk about it, which creates more buzz, and then more outlets want to review the book. Voila, the virtuous or diabolical cycle by which buzz begets buzz begets buzz. The publishing world does want a breakout literary success. The industry loves when a well-written book sparks conversations and interest. Sean DeLone, editor at Atria, bemoaned the lack of a big, "you've got to read this literary novel in 2025 after the success of Percival Everett's James a year earlier. What will be the James of 2025? Answer, there ain't one. That's the problem. New York Times Book Review podcast host MJ Franklin agrees.
For me, 2025 was the lost year in books. Again, the energy felt deflated, but one storyline that I was following along was whether or not there was going to be a big, giant breakout book of the year. And it didn't seem to me like there was one.
Apparently, the all-powerful, nefarious publishing cabal was taking a year off. To be fair, DeBoer is not actually proposing a meritocratic revolution, merely more transparency and honesty, which, yeah, totally. Only I'm not so sure about his specific examples. Why not just say, if you're one of the writers who blessed Ms. Cash with their spotlight, yeah, so the publicist who pitched this was particularly aggressive. Oh, and also I owed her a favor. And yeah, this has already been optioned to Netflix. So you think the author of a book review should tell us how aggressive the publicist was? This is a great book, 4 out of 5 stars. The publicist was 8 out of 10 on the pushiness scale. Also, the idea that the book reviewer would owe a publicist a favor, that kind of quid pro quo is common in conspiracy theories because it's so clean, but according to book reviewers like Becca Rothfeld, the biases at work here are way more subtle. It's more like, oh, I know this publicist, so yeah, I'll open her emails. And as for the Netflix thing, book reviewers often do mention if a book has been optioned by a movie studio. The game is rigged, DeBoer writes, and many who labor away within it never had a chance, and out of sheer compassion for them, we should be real about all of this. Yeah, let's be real with them, but this statement is too black and white. Yes, the system rewards connections, it prizes youth, it loves authors who have done interesting stuff and are charming and easy to photograph. Big publishers throw big money behind the books they paid the most for, but that doesn't mean that people never had a chance. It just means that their path was harder. Speaking of photos, let's do a quick detour. 1.
I always knew that Mickey Mouse's gloves should be clean. I was only a junior animator at the time, but something inside me just knew that his hands shouldn't be filthy.
2. I don't love puns personally, but Madeline Cash apparently does, and has filled her novel with gnats, so that explanation becomes explanation, or I think that's how you'd still pronounce it, which some readers are liking, but some aren't. But I do like the kind of visual pun thing happening here, because here is Madeline posing in front of art from the book Madeline. If only she were holding a dollar bill in her hand, it would have been like this scene.
What's your name?
My name? P.T. Griffin.
Third observation, she really likes putting her head in her hands, like here and here and here and especially here. The implication of this pose, I think, is not that her brain is so heavy it needs the support of her forearms. It's that she's kind of bored, a little over it, suffering from a little artistic ennui, or like she's in one of those old American Apparel ads, and oh, look, she kind of is. Now, if DeBoer had read her novel and said, this book is garbage and it's only getting reviews because she's had photo shoots like this, that's an argument. But he hasn't read Lost Lambs. I haven't either, but I read a paragraphed excerpt in one of the reviews, and the topic is apropos. She took to her forums, a loyal conspiracy community at her fingertips, and within minutes she was flooded with responses. Discerning fact from fiction was a key component of her work. She employed the assistance of a drug she kept stored in a hollowed-out encyclopedia. It was meant to sterilize camels, but had a stimulating effect on women 16 to 32. Compelled by the veterinary pharmaceutical, she started down a trail of headlines until a through line materialized. I think that's some pretty good writing. It's got whiffs of Jonathan Franzen, who I love. And look, I'll admit I'm feeling a little left out that this camel sterilizing drug has no effect on guys like me. I thought this was a meritocracy. Novelist Leigh Stein says that age is also at play. When a writer under 30 publishes a novel, there's a built-in hook. It makes journalists and critics' jobs easier. The novel is saying something about what it's like to be a young adult right now. There are about 17 people left with staff culture writing jobs, and they are all very conscious of the fact that they will swiftly be replaced by the next generation if they don't stay relevant and pay attention to what young adults care about. Once you start saying, they don't write good music anymore, you are toast. Stein also notes that DeBoer's novel, The Mind Reels, which came out last year, is about a 15-year-old girl. Thus, the target audience for both Cash's debut novel and DeBoer's debut novel are maidens, the women under 30 on Book Talk and Bookstagram, the readers making sad girl, weird girl lit recommendation roundups, the fig tree girls, the girl bloggers, which I think explains this joke from her extremely ritzy book launch party.
When I was 19, I was going through a particularly bad breakup, and I wrote in my diary, like, it's okay, one day I will publish a book with FSG, and I hear that your boobs grow into your 20s. So the former happened 10 years later.
See, guys? I'm not the only one writing my jokes in advance. So yeah, with ladies reading more than the men and the young ladies posting more than the old ones, is it such a shocker that this person is getting buzz? She started a weird literary magazine and has been throwing parties with incredible flyers. Look at this. Look at this. And no, I don't think I'll be paying $555 for the father figure ticket to the Purity Ball, even if it does come with 5 raffle tickets, because I'm busy that night.
There. Whoa! These diapers are way too big. What size did you get? They're ultra absorbent.
And I do think it's fair to question whether the most recent party qualifies as literary, given that there were no readings, but there was a wet t-shirt contest. Don't worry, I'm sure it was very ironic. Anyway, when DeBoer says the game is rigged and many who labor away within it never had a chance, this is immediately disproved by Freddie DeBoer, who states that he opened a Blogspot account in a public library with absolutely no media connections, clout, or access, and now has 66,000 Substack followers and a novel that was reviewed positively in the New York Times and the New Yorker. What do you mean people never had a chance? You're living proof of the opposite, that you don't need $1 million or a well-connected dad or even a father figure you met at the Purity Ball. Does Madeline Cash deserve this buzzy coverage? I wasn't sure until I read this exchange from an interview she did with the Harvard Advocate. Harvard Advocate. Do you have a special talent or party trick? Madeline Cash. Oh, I can make this sound like a helicopter landing? This is going to be hard for you guys to articulate into print, but it's like, warp. Harvard Advocate. That is very impressive. Look, I'm a simple man. I like good writing, and I believe that anybody whose party trick is doing a helicopter landing sound deserves all the press they can get. Freddie DeBoer, step your sound effect game up, my brother, and watch the reviews pour in. I'm Blake. This is Below the Fray. Do it again, darling, would you? See? Doesn't that sound just like when we land in our helicopter?